Hello and welcome back. This time we're going to be talking about Sukuna, the King of Curses, and the backlash from the community that he's been receiving for the past couple months. This video will attempt to address the convenience man allegations and discuss how valid some of the common claims made against him are. And we can attempt to be more moderate and considerate of both sides with no massive biases either way. That being said, the majority of this video will be defending Sukuna, as I think he's getting too much flack recently. Anyways, let's get right into this Reddit post. The poster is being kept anonymous out of respect, and we're going to go point by point and discuss their takes, even if they meant it as a joke. I've seen many people seriously match this sentiment. The first point is that Yuji's contract with Sukuna didn't include himself. This is of course the case because not only is Yuji an incredibly selfless person, but also just as we are being the all-knowing audience, Yuji is completely ignorant to the mechanics and interworkings of binding vows. So it's only natural that he wouldn't make an airtight vow when even genius characters like Mekamaru cannot make airtight vows. And Yuji had to deal with the duress of literally being pronounced legally dead and also being generally unintelligent. This issue, in my opinion, is mostly due to Gege never defining the binding vows properly, because Sukuna and Yuji can have completely different interpretations of what hurting someone really is, similar to the climax of Chainsaw Man Part 1. But it's very unlikely that we'll ever get an answer as to how this works exactly. So I'd sum this up with both Yuji being selfless, and if we didn't understand binding vows, it would make even less sense for Yuji to on his second mission as a Jujutsu sorcerer. The second point is that the user of Jacob's Ladder is the only person who would hesitate to kill Megumi, which first of all I believe is heavily inaccurate, as even Gojo is hesitant to kill Megumi and claims to be holding back for his sake in the fight against Sukuna. In addition, I believe that this is far more of a convenience on Megumi's part, if anything. She does save him after the Reggie Star fight and helps him to form a base of operations and reconvene with Yuji, where Sukuna learns about Angel and her desire to kill him no matter what. So I'd argue from that point on, Sukuna's decision to take Megumi's body was an even more valuable asset, and was her aversion to killing Megumi more of a part of Sukuna's plan than mere convenience, since he knew about her feelings towards Megumi ahead of time. The third point is that Gojo decided to wait a month for no particular reason so that Sukuna could reach full strength, and I think that this is an extreme exaggeration, as we see several different ways that the sorcerer's training with Gojo during that 1 month period had paid off, and he had many emotional and tactical reasons to fall back in that instance. The fourth point is that Yuji forgot to tell Gojo about Sukuna's open domain, even though he had the whole month to do so. And I do find that this one is kind of strange, but there is a possibility that Yuji either repressed the memory of Sukuna's domain or didn't fully understand the distinction between an open and closed domain due to his unfamiliarity with the topic. However, it was a strange narrative decision by Gege, and I am bordering on agreeing that it was a convenience on Sukuna's part. I was very shocked by that. The next point is that Sukuna needed Mahoraga to show him how to do something he was technically already capable of accomplishing, which I wouldn't consider this to be an example of convenience. I believe the fact that he had to jump through all the hoops required to acquire and protect Mahoraga just to optimize his technique would be an example of inconvenience, in my opinion. The next point is, in a world where minimalism is king, changing Cleave's target to be more inclusive actually makes it several times stronger. And I think that there is a massive misunderstanding here. I do agree that sorcerers should strive for minimalism to be able to use their abilities and techniques as fast and easily as possible. But it should be noted that Sukuna was able to use the technique with no hands against Gojo, and until that binding vow, it was seemingly conditionless. So this is actually an example of minimalism. Moving on to the next point, the 6 eyes could discern someone's technique by a glance, but couldn't discern strong cleave from regular cleave. And The first thing I'd like to say in response is that Gojo wasn't fully aware of Mahoraga's wheel affecting Megumi and Sukuna's soul prior in the exact same fight, so it's evident that Gojo's eyes aren't absolute, and it's possible that extremely complex techniques are harder for him to read, or possibly Sukuna is just capable of evading Gojo's advanced readings. Ultimately, given the context of Gojo being completely on top at the time, Sukuna having proved unable to touch him for about 15 chapters leading up to this moment, it's only reasonable that an overconfident character like Gojo would drop his guard, much like he did the last time that he almost died. The next point is that Gojo didn't react whatsoever to the spark of cursed energy before Strong Cleave, and I'd like to say that it is shown to be incredibly difficult to react to or dodge the World Slash. Even Kashimo, who's one of the fastest characters in the series, needed to be warned ahead of time by Sukuna, and since then, Sukuna's control over Megumi's body and lack of limbs have nerfed him considerably. So Gojo either being too sure of his Infinity's protection to care or too slow to dodge would both be plausible options, in my opinion, to explain this issue. Moving on to a point that I somewhat agree with, Gojo forgot he could teleport. It is incredibly strange that Gojo hardly ever used his teleportation in combat. I do find that somewhat convenient for most of Gojo's opponents, and I'm sure it could have provided more value in the fight against Sukuna. However, it's unlikely that he could teleport out of a domain due to their spatial manipulative properties, and he clearly couldn't have reacted and used it to dodge the World Slash, so it wouldn't be likely to change the result of the fight. Even Mahoraga was able to slash Gojo's arm off, so it's not that far-fetched to assume Sukuna's slashes are even faster than Mahoraga's. Strong Cleave is shown to have travel time, but Gojo didn't use reverse curse technique as it went through him. This point seems to assume that Gojo can heal his body back together the very instant that it was cut, which we've seen him do similar things when he was tanking Sukuna's shrine. But the key difference in this instance is that Gojo could tank the initial slashes and then immediately heal them, whereas the World Slash incapacitated him immediately and stopped him from being able to heal. Next is, despite having full cursed energy reserves thanks to Black Flash, Gojo didn't retaliate after being bisected. We are made aware that cursed energy comes from the core of the human body, or the stomach. Sukuna sliced Gojo in such a way that his core couldn't transfer energy to his arms or brain, so punching, using hand signs, and reverse curse technique would all be practically impossible. Moving on, Higuruma's domain is situationally effective against criminals, unless the criminals are armed. I believe that Higuruma's technique is subjective, much like the court of law. The judge-man will decide on case-by-case basis what the most appropriate punishment is, and in this case, the supreme martial solution, our Kamutoke, was an extremely powerful curse tool that was made by Yorozu, who is basically a special grade version of Mai, who was able to make a soul splitter katana, even though she struggled to make a single bullet per day before her death. So I believe, given that information, that this was a completely consistent use of the creation technique, given that both parties gave their lives. And it only makes sense that the judge would take someone's curse tool, as it took Yuji's energy, so it is known to alter its confiscation to suit the circumstances. And Sukuna's tool should be mythically powerful, since he used it to dominate the biggest houses back in the Heian era. And the only reason we didn't get to witness its true power is that it was mostly used on Kashimo, who is basically immune to its lightning effects. And the final point is, Sukuna picked up a gift a couple minutes ago, which made the above contrivance take effect. And while I know this one is definitely a joke, it was over a month later that this fight occurred after Sukuna gaining his curse tool. Thanks to everyone for watching this one. It was a bit different, but I'd like to discuss informal topics in the community just as much as official content. Tell me if you think my takes are reasonable or a little too biased in favor of Sukuna in the comments. And until next time, have a good day and take it easy.